Shalom Aleichem Rabotei, Chag Sameach, Sukkot Sameach, Shana Tova, Baruch Hashem. We are nearing the very end of our Zera Shimshon journey. It's a bittersweet moment, but we're going to move on, VeZot Hashem. This is going to be the shiur on the Zera Shimshon for Parashat VeZot HaBerakha, which we are planning to read, hopefully on the Chag, the holiday of Simchat Torah, in a few days from now. And we're just going to do one short piece of the Zera Shimshon here to wrap up, for now at least, our journey on the Zera Shimshon, because next week on Bereshit I plan to start a new Mefarish, a new angle, a new Chacham explaining the Torah, and we will start there VeZot Hashem next time. But today is Zera Shimshon, VeZot HaBerakha, Derush Zayin. The last parasha in the Torah, VeZot HaBerakha, deals with Moshe Rabbeinu giving his last words to each and every tribe, each and every shevet of the nation of Israel. And each Berakha is very poetic, very deep, very prophetic, a lot to be unpacked inside every Berakha that he gives. And today, the Zera Shimshon is going to look at the Berakha that he gives for the tribe of Gad. It says over here, Vayar Reshit Lo, Ki Sham Chalkat Mechokek Safun. Very poetic language. I'll translate it here as ArtScroll translates it. It's verse 33:21 in Devarim. It says the following: Vayar Reshit Lo. About God, he said, "Blessed is he who broadens God." G-A-D, right? That's the name of the tribe. He dwells like a lion, tearing off arm and even head. But the next verse is what the Zera Shimshon is focusing on. What is that? He chose the first portion for himself. God chose something special for himself, special portion, the first one. Why? For that is where the lawgiver's plot is hidden. That is where the lawgiver, mechokek, literally means the inscriber, the engraver. But here it's referring to a lawgiver, a certain person. We'll see who that is. That's where his plot, his land is hidden, in that place where, in the portion which God, J-A-D, chose for himself. That is the verse. What does that mean? Rashi explained over there, based on Gemara Masechet Sotah. Ra'a litol lo chelek be'eretz Sichon ve'og. God saw that he wanted to choose a special portion in the land of Sichon and Og. Those are the two kings, the last two kings that Moshe and the people defeated and overcame. Their land was right to the east of the Jordan River, right? That's the portion where Gad and Reuven and half of the tribe of Menashe came to Moshe to negotiate about, because they wanted to stay there. And that's the portion eventually of land that they would get. They made a special deal with Moshe, right? They said that Moshe got first very upset, and Reuven and Gad and Menashe said, "Hold on, we'll make a deal. We're going to send our." Well, Moshe first said, the only way you're going to get this land is that if when we go inside to capture the land of Canaan, of Eretz Yisrael proper, that you are going to send your men to the front lines of war, and you're going to stay there until the land is apportioned, which ended up being a total of 14 years. So the men of the tribes of Gad and Reuven, and half of the tribe of Menashe, did that. They stayed true to their word, and they didn't see their families for 14 years, because they left their women and children back in that land that they got on the east side of the Jordan River, and they went to war to support their brethren, so that they would not be, they shouldn't, be excluded from that. Nevertheless, the way it happened was that Reuven and Gad, those tribes, came over to Moshe and specifically requested. They said, "We want this land. This land looks beautiful." Right? It was right before they entered. So they were all on the land at that moment, on the east side of the Jordan River, and they said, "There's a lot of grazing lands here, and we have a lot of cattle and sheep, and we need this land to support our sheep." Basically, it was a financial reason. Seems like. The Torah simply says there, it's in Parashat, I believe Parashat Matot, if I'm not mistaken, Parashat Matot, where the Torah makes it simple. It seems like their main reason was a financial reason, that they really thought this land would fit their needs. But the Zera Shimshon wants to look deeper. It says over here, based on Rashi, that God, he saw to choose that land that was previously owned by Sichon and Og. That was the first part of the conquering of the land, technically, right? Because eventually, since Gad and Reuven got that land, it became somewhat of a part of the land of Eretz Israel. And therefore, that was the first part of the conquering of all the land. Eventually, that would continue throughout the book of Joshua, where he leads the people into the land to get the rest of the land. Kisham Chelkat. The verse here says, why did God choose that portion? Because there is the portion or the place of the lawgiver. What does that mean? What was that lawgiver talking about? It's talking about Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu was the mediator, the translator, the middleman, the lawgiver, so to speak, between God and the Jewish people. Why? Ki yada asher sham benachalato chelkat sadeh kevura mechukak v'hu Moshe ad kan sheno. Because God, those people of the tribe who came to Moshe to ask him, they knew that land, God's land, I keep saying God. When I say God, I'm talking about G-A-D, not G-O-D. That God's land was where Moshe Rabbeinu was eventually going to be buried, which he does get buried at the end of this week's Parashat HaBerakha. That's where Moshe Rabbeinu was buried. Now, technically, the Torah says we don't know exactly where, right? The Torah says no man knows exactly where he's buried. But we know that the portion, however, was in the portion of God. That's what it says in Masechet Sotah. And therefore, Rashi says over here, based on that Gemara, that God came over to Moshe, along with Reuven, and asked him for that land because God knew that Moshe's body would be buried there, and that would make the land even more special, and that's why they wanted it. That's what it says. Makshim, but people have a question. V'chan, mashma, from this Rashi, it sounds like, that the main reason, it seems like, why God wanted to take that land instead of going across the Jordan River and going to take the other land. Why? Because he knew that Moshe Rabbeinu was going to be buried there in the future, and that's why it was a special land, and that's why he wanted it. But nevertheless, above in Parashat Matot, Bamidbar, Lamed Bet Aleph, over there it says, Ita, if you look at the whole conversation between Moshe Rabbeinu and the tribes of Gad and Reuven, Ita ta'am acher, it says another reason over there. It seems like it says simply a different reason. What does it say? Dichtiv umiknei rav haya livnei Reuven. The Torah says that the sons of Reuven, the sons of God, had a lot of cattle and sheep, and therefore that land was fitting for them because they had a lot of grasslands over there that could feed them. So therefore, it seems like the Torah is telling us the reason why they wanted that land is because of a financial reason, not because of Moshe's eventual death over there. And it can be explained, this contradiction can be explained how? Based on what the Ramban wrote. Parashat Matot over there, Lamed Bet Bet, says, Shebnei Gad hem natnu ha'etzah libnei Reuven. Ramban says that God, the sons of God, the tribe of God, they're the ones who came over to Reuven first, and they're the ones who planted the idea and gave him the advice that we should take this land here and not cross the Jordan River. They started the whole domino, effect. לבחור להם ארץ סיחון ואוג. Why? שכן מצינו שבכל הפרשה מזכיר הכתוב בני גד קודם בני ראובן. Because if you look at that parsha over there in Matot, when they're having a conversation with Moshe, and Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven, those they're mentioned. Usually God is mentioned first. It says the sons of God and the sons of Reuven. Sons of God, the sons of Reuven. So God is mentioned first as the leader, the initiator of the whole process, which which is unusual because Reuven is the firstborn. So if they're going to be mentioned together, Reuven should be mentioned first, it seems like. Nevertheless, God is mentioned first. Why? Because in this situation, they were the ones who started the whole advice, the whole idea to stay there on that side of the land. But there's only one verse, however, where it flips the order. The first verse in that conversation, where it says Reuven first and then God. And what is the context of that verse? That they had a lot of cattle and sheep. Hikdim Reuven lefi shehu bechor. And the reason why over there, that's one exceptional verse, that Reuven comes first is because he's the firstborn. That's what the Ramban says. Nevertheless, the mashma mizeh, from here we could learn, says the Zera Shimshon, she'af al pi shehaya lo leReuven miknei rav, that even though Reuven had a lot of cattle and sheep, lo haya mevakesh eretz Sichon. Nevertheless, he didn't really put his mind, he didn't really want to request that land of Sichon and Og on the east side of the Jordan. They never would have wanted it if it wasn't for God, right? Im Gad lo haya noten lo etzah. If God never gave them the advice to stay there, they wouldn't have, Reuven would never have thought about it. If so, therefore the reason that they had a lot of sheep and that's why they wanted to stay there, it's not enough of a reason. It's not a sufficient reason. Rather, it was God who started all this, and the reason why God did it is not because they had a lot of sheep, it's only because they wanted to have the land Moshe was going to be eventually buried in. So it was a much more spiritual reason. And since the whole reason why God wanted that land was because it was connected to the death of Moshe, and when they're coming over to Moshe to negotiate with him, it would not have been appropriate to tell Moshe, we want this land because you're going to be buried here. That would be disrespectful to Moshe. Talking about his death, it's not nice. And that's why the Torah couldn't say that reason explicitly. ועוד שלא היה מועיל רק לבני גד ולא לבני ראובן, משום הכי שם בפרשת מטות הזכיר הטעם של מקנה רב וכאן רמז הטעם האחר ושניהם אמת. That's why over there in Parashat Matot it only says the reason of a lot of sheep, because that's only a surface reason, it's a basic reason. And really in truth, Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven, they get very criticized by all the commentators, like these are the sons of Yaakov Avinu, these are very holy people, this is the generation that received the Torah. They understand that priorities, when it comes to priorities, spirituality comes first, not financial, right? So why did they all of a sudden decide to take the financial benefit over the spiritual? Even there, when it says over there, when Reuven and God came over to Moshe, they said, we want to build houses for our sheep and then for our children, and then we'll go to war with you guys. But Moshe fixed them. He said, no. First you have to build houses for your children and then your sheep and cattle, right? So again, he's fixing their priorities, because it seems like Reuven and God's priorities are all over the place. They're more worried about their finances more than their children, more than the spiritual holy land, more than all these things. So with this Zera Shimshon, he's showing us that no, it's not true. It's not true at all, on a certain deeper level. Because really, the main reason, the main push for why they wanted this was because they wanted to have a spiritual zechut of Moshe Rabbeinu that would be buried in that land. So it was really a spiritual reason that was underlying everything. And the physical reason was just a facade. It was just a cover up. It was important too to them, but not as much as the deeper reason of the spiritual. It was just the physical reason was just a cover up, because they couldn't insult Moshe by telling him about his death. So we see here that whenever we see something that may seem simple in the Torah as just base physical or financial, where how can such a big tzaddik make such a wrong calculation and decision in his mind, and choose something less important over something more important, we should always look deeper and understand that there's so many layers to the Torah, and there's sometimes things that we're missing, and sometimes we don't have the whole picture. So it's always important to dig and investigate. And Baruch Hashem, we had the opportunity to dig and investigate with the Zera Shimshon this entire year. We started over a year ago, because really this past year was a leap year. So it was over 13 months ago, more about the Zera Shimshon. So Baruch Hashem, we learned a lot, and the zechut and the guarantee that he gives in his introduction should protect and bless all of us continuously. And VeZot Hashem, we're looking forward. I believe I want to start next year, the next cycle of the Parashiyot with these short clips. VeZot Hashem, we're going to do the Kli Yakar. The Kli Yakar is an amazing, deep and just clear and understandable and delicious commentary on the Torah. And VeZot Hashem, Hashem should help us to make that happen. Baruch Adonai Olam. Amen v'amen.